Welcome to my podcast, guys. If you are here to work on your relationship with your child, then you are for sure in the right space because you will always have to work on your relationship with yourself. And this is what I offer here on my podcast. So if you listen to my podcast and hear things that are not obviously related to your son, listen on, because whatever you improve in your relationship with yourself will automatically improve all of your relationships, including with your son. So welcome and enjoy. Guys, happy Wednesday, or whenever you're listening. But for me, every Wednesday I record. So I'm so happy to be with you here. Mentally, I am with you because when I plan and write on my podcast, I am thinking of you. What are you struggling with? What are you going through? How can I help you? I'm thinking about you so much that I'm with you. So I'm so excited. Today is the last week of May, and you know what this means? This means that I finally get to announce who is the winner of the giveaway, the $200 gift certificate to Lululemon, and that person is Kathy Cullen. She's my friend, actually. She's so awesome. She's also my peer coach. I met her at the life coach school, and she is just great. She's so supportive. And I love coaching with her. And so congrats, Kathy. I'm going to email you later and send it to you. Thanks for sharing the podcast. I really appreciate it. It helps other people find it sooner. And that was my first giveaway. That was my 1 year complete. I have a bit more than 52 episodes total now. I started out with the name Be Nice to Yourself podcast, and now it's Stop Fighting with Your Son. But really, I'm talking all about the same stuff that I still believe in, and it's all really one thing. When we're nice to ourselves, we're nice to others. So that's done and over with. I'm so excited that that's done. Now I want to talk about a zero fights person. I've been really thinking about it. What is it that we're trying to achieve here, right? If we're fighting with our son, my guess is that you might be fighting with other people, your spouse, your parents, your sisters. You might be a person who is not fighting with them anymore, but you are not even talking to them, because when you do get together with that person, whoever it is, you fight with them. And how do I know this? Is because I used to be that person. And it wasn't like this big, huge thing in my life, but now looking back at it, I can see that pattern was showing up to me in my life everywhere. I fought with my mom a lot, right? I fought with my dad sometimes. I fought with my brother. I mean, sibling fighting, I think that's part of life, right? But as grown-ups, you don't have to fight, right? Fought with my husband. I used to fight with my best friend in high school. I mean, with my best friend right now, we never fight. I don't fight with my husband. I don't fight with my mom. And it's been the hugest change was with my mom. And of course, right, I worked with my relationship with my boys. And so I don't want to fight with them either. So I really sat down and I looked at the two different people. If one person is someone who doesn't fight, and the other person is someone who fights, what is the difference between them? And I came up with a list, and I'm going to share that with you so that you can see the patterns that both people will embody. But before I tell you about the zero fights person and the fighting person, I want to give you two different examples so that you can it's easier to see in those examples about someone else. So the first example I wrote down is a person who works out. So you might relate to these people. Either you're a person who works out, or you're a person who doesn't work out and wants to work out. And so the difference between these two people. So the person who works out is a person who thinks of themselves as this is just what they do. This person who works out doesn't spend a lot of mental energy thinking about their workouts. Okay? They just do the workouts and go on with their life in general, right? This is kind of like the trend. They might think of what they're going to work out, how they're going to work out. They might think about improving their workouts. They might think about hiring a different trainer, right? But this is not a draining mental energy. They do it most of the time. And when they don't work out, the main difference is that between this person and the person who doesn't work out is that they don't make it mean anything about themselves. They don't make it mean that, oh my gosh, I didn't work out. I don't know if I'll ever be able to work out again. Oh my gosh, something's wrong with me. I feel bad that I didn't work out. They don't do that. All they do, they don't make it mean anything. They're like, well, I couldn't work out today, but I'm going to work out tomorrow. Like, this is their extent of their thought process, because they are the person, their identity is of a person who works out. So they don't have that problem to solve of, oh, how do I get to work out, right? So they don't spend a lot of mental energy on thinking about workouts, thinking about how to get to work out. They don't feel guilty about not working out. They also don't feel ashamed about sometimes not working out. And they also don't feel like it's a moral thing to work out or not to work out. It's just something that they do, right? In general, I'm just seeing like if that's part of an identity of a person, then this is how they will experience that part of themselves. They also don't feel bad when they see other people work out, because it's not something that they're struggling with. So they're like, well, I work out, they work out. What's the big deal, right? So now let's look at the person who doesn't work out but wants to work out, and they think it's a problem that they don't work out. They spend a lot of mental energy thinking about working out. They're talking and they're complaining. They're saying how hard it is to get themselves to work out. They say, I don't have the willpower. They feel guilty when they don't work out. And when they feel guilty that they didn't work out that day, they make it mean something about themselves. Like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to figure this out. I have discipline problem, or I don't have willpower, or they just basically take the action of not working out and make it kind of plug it into their identity of, oh, I can't get to work out. I'm struggling working out. I can't get myself to get to the gym, right? They're like, they make it mean something about them that's not serving them. And so they feel like something's wrong with them. They feel they take their actions and they extend it to their own personality. If I don't work out, it means something's wrong with me, or something about me. Like, I'm just that kind of person. I just don't love working out. And then they feel bad about themselves. They feel ashamed. And so guess what happens when we feel ashamed and we feel bad about ourselves? Well, we're definitely not going to go and work out. We're going to keep beating ourselves up, right? When that person works out, their thinking is it's never good enough. It's never enough. Well, I worked out, but I still can't get to work out other days. Oh, that was so hard. Oh, I just did it this one time. And how come I didn't get to the gym all the other times, right? So the difference in my eyes, and I hope that you can see the difference, is the mental energy that the person spends on the workouts is huge difference. The person who wants to work out thinks about it a lot, is feeling bad about themselves when they don't do it, and they kind of, whatever happens, they use it as evidence to support their belief that it's hard to work out, right? And they're always trying to solve that problem. How do I work out? How do I get myself to work out? And the person who works out, they're not even really thinking that much about workouts. They're thinking about other problems, well, like quotation marks, other problems in their life they would like to solve. But the part about workouts, they're like, yeah, this is just what I do. I brush my teeth every day. I'm not going to think about brushing teeth every day because it's just what I do. That part is done. I just do it. So I'm going to move on. My brain's going to move on to solving other problems in my life that I'm not satisfied with. Okay. So that's one example about workouts. And the other example is close to my heart recently, is a person who eats sweets, who's a sweets person, quotation marks, versus a person who is not a sweets person. And I've just recently done this work with myself and feel like I had a huge breakthrough because my identity for most of my life was that I am a sweets person. I love bread. I love sweets. I love desserts. I love pastry. And I was that person who was struggling. I was obsessed. I would spend a lot of my thinking, my energy, mental energy, thinking about how to stop eating sweets, how to stop wanting them, which ones to eat, when can I eat the one next, why can't I eat it? I was feeling like depriving myself. There's a lot of chatter going on in my head. There was about this topic. It's a problem. I'm eating it. I shouldn't be eating it. And I kept on and on and on. And also I made it this part of my identity. I am someone who likes sweets. My husband is not, so I made it part of his identity, and I am a person who does. And that felt kind of like a done deal, right? Like this is just who I am. I can't do anything about it. And so that part of the way I thought about it as part of my identity kept me stuck in having the same actions, like eating sweets, not eating sweets, thinking about sweets, trying not to think about them, and kind of thinking like this is always going to be me. And then recently I thought, okay, well, I realized it's just a thought when I'm thinking, oh, I'm a sweets person. I can just decide that I'm not a sweets person. And okay, sometimes you can't really just out of nowhere jump into the new identity and, it stick. For me, I have done a lot of work and coaching work and self-exploration work and growth work around this topic. So I was ready to make that decision and it felt right for me and it clicked. And I could really lean into the new identity of I'm not a sweets person. And it doesn't even mean that I don't like sweets. It's just I'm not a sweets person and I decided not to eat sweets, right? I can make that part of my identity to be that. And I noticed that when my son offered me something and I said to him, oh, I'm trying not to eat sweets. And I caught myself in the moment and I said, well, that's not correct. I'm not trying to eat sweets, not to eat sweets. I'm actually the person who doesn't eat sweets. So notice the difference. I'm trying not to eat sweets still says that you believe that you're a person who likes sweets. And I noticed it and I switched it to, oh no, I'm the person who decided that I don't no longer eat sweets. Because I have reasons that really feel good to me and I don't want to ever think about it anymore. So this is kind of like the profile of the person who identifies themselves as a person who loves sweets. Let me see what else I wrote down. I'm trying not to eat sweets or to not eat sweets. I think a lot about them, feels deprived or goes overboard eating them, feels guilty, feels a little bit of a shame, like, oh, something's wrong with me. Like, I wish I didn't grow up eating sweets. I wish I was different. I wish I was like someone who doesn't eat them, right? And also, after a while trying to solve it, you feel stuck and you feel doom. You feel like you're never going to solve it, right? So this is what the person is like when they eat sweets. And then if we look at the person, like what is the mental structure of a person who doesn't eat sweets? First of all, they believe, like it's a fact about themselves, that they're not a sweets person. And I have a perfect example is my husband. He says, I don't like sweets. And he's like, my teeth hurt when I eat sweets. I don't like them. I don't like cake. I don't like sweets. He's like, I like chips or something savory, right? And he believes it's such a big part of his identity that it's true for him. And because he's lived that his whole life, he's found a lot of evidence to support that. So now it's been reinforced with how he lives. So first of all, they believe this is just who they are. And they don't even think, so again, like with the workouts, they don't think much about it. It's not like they're sitting there around and thinking, oh, I'm so happy I don't eat sweets. Oh, I'm so happy I'm not going to have cake on this birthday. No, that doesn't even cross their mind. They're thinking about what am I going to do tonight? Or, oh, I have this stuff to get done. I have work tomorrow. We're going to go on a hike, right? They're thinking about their life, the rest of their life that has nothing to do with sweets. And when the time comes that they do have something sweet, which people do, right? My husband sometimes has something. They, again, don't make it mean anything about them that they had that thing. They don't even think about it. They're like, oh yeah, well, yeah, I like that, but that's enough for me. And they move on. Like, he goes and brushes his teeth and he's like, okay, here's my water, right? So, again, so they don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. What else did I write down? They think about the other things in their life. And so this is the big difference in the people who, want to be, done with sweets or who want to work out, is that they spend a lot of time thinking about those things versus the person who already does it. They are just doing it. They're being that person. They're living that life and thinking about other things they want. Okay. So now let's go straight to the person of zero fights person. The same pattern applies here. And the person who has fights in their life and who has the identity of having fights, they don't think of themselves like, oh my gosh, I have a lot of fights. No, it would sound something like this. Oh, they would describe their relationship like this. I have a tumultuous relationship with my mom. That's what they would say, right? As if it's a fact, as if it's true, as if everyone would agree. And it's not. Everyone would have a different opinion about that relationship. Even the person on the other end would describe it differently, right? Or they would say something like, we fight every time I see them, right? Like that was with my mom because I lived in Calgary and she lives in Toronto. Every time she would come to visit me, my thought about it, like, oh yeah, we fight every time. So then I'd be thinking like, okay, how do we not fight? Oh, we fight on the third day when she comes and I want to see her, but, I'm dreading it. It's not nice. How do I figure it out? So again, I would spend mental energy on thinking about it, dreading it. And, also I would state it as a fact. I would be like, yeah, this is just what we do. We just fight. Right. And so the people who have who tend to fight, think of their relationships as bumpy or struggling relationship or hard relationship or tumultuous. So the way they would describe their relationship would be like in a hard way, right? And the person who has zero fights, they would describe their relationship as like, oh yeah, we're good. We have a good relationship. And notice how that, like, as soon as they would say it, they don't even think about it. They're like, yeah, we're good. And they move on to something else in their life. Like, oh, we're going to do this, something fun with them, or we're going to go on this trip, or we're going to cook that thing, or looking forward to reading a bunch of books and like playing some games and like having dinner with them, right? About that person. And so again, very little time is spent on thinking about the relationship if you're a zero fights person, right? So the person who thinks that the relationship is hard, we're back to the other person who kind of fights a lot. Here's the pattern that they have. There's a lot of blaming. They really believe, and we all do this. I've done it. We believe when we're that person that if the other person behaved differently, then we would stop fighting. It seems like a no-brainer, right? When we believe that, we're like, the only reason I'm fighting is because of the other person. So they feel powerless to stop fighting. Okay. They also feel guilty because they are also blaming themselves a bit. If only I was not as high-tempered, then we wouldn't fight as much. So they feel guilty. And also when they have a disagreement, they again make it mean that they have a hard relationship with that person. So they are staying in the identity of a fighting person, a person who fights, versus a person who doesn't fight. If they have a disagreement, if they have a fight, what we would call a fight, what the person with zero fights, their mentality is, let me see how I'm wrong here. Let me listen to the other person. So the other person is open to figuring out what's going on for the other person. This person who is zero fights person, they are willing to be wrong. They're willing to be wrong, and it's so much easier for them to apologize because they're not connecting their actions to themselves as a person. Like them having a fight doesn't mean anything is wrong with them. It's just they maybe have done something wrong in the past in their actions, and there's nothing wrong with that. So they don't feel bad about themselves. They're willing and they're open and they're wanting to connect with that person who they're fighting with. And that creates connection. Them doing that creates closeness, creates intimacy. And in fact, they use that fight to get closer to the other person. They use that fight to feel more love and more connectedness and more understanding towards the person that's in their life. And if we go back to the person who is fighting, they're on a defensive. They're definitely closed off. They're not willing to be wrong because they make it mean that if I'm wrong, then something's wrong with me. Right? Of course, we're not going to want to be willing to be wrong if that means something's wrong with us. Of course, right? But that is just how they're used to think. They're used to thinking this way. And so, let's see my list. So they're blaming, they feel guilty, they equate their actions or the fight that they had to themselves. Like if I had a fight, then something's wrong with me. Or if I had a fight, then something's wrong with our relationship. And so they're not willing to be wrong. They're not willing to apologize. They're blaming, they're defending, and all of that action is creating a disconnect from the person they want to connect the most. This is a very important point. Actually, I'm glad that I brought that up, is that when we're fighting, we are actually 99% of the time, we're actually probably fighting with the person we want to connect with the most. We're fighting with the person we love the most. Like, think about it, right? If it's your child, your spouse, your parent, your friend, you want to love them. You want to connect with them. You want to feel understood. And you are more likely to want to understand them if you remember that. You're like, oh, I actually want to be good with them. I want to feel like we're good, we're solid. And once we remember that, then we're going to be more willing to try to understand what they're going through. But to do that, you have to be willing to be wrong. And to be willing to be wrong, you have to be willing to think like there's nothing wrong with me if I'm wrong. Okay? Gosh, I'm talking fast. I hope you can keep up. So the three things that I wrote down in summary that separate us from a person who fights and the person who doesn't fight. And again, the zero fights person will have fights. We're all human. I want to name it that because of the feeling, how that feels. Like when you think of yourself as a zero fights person, you're going to feel good about yourself, right? And you're going to look for how that's true in your life and all your relationships. And the more you do that, the more you will create that for yourself. And the fights that you will have will actually bring you closer to the people you have in your life. Okay. So the couple things that I wrote down for the person who is a zero fights person is that they are open. They're open to hear out the other person. They're willing to be wrong. They want to understand the other person. And they don't connect their actions to themselves as a person. Okay? And they would describe their relationship as it's good. Super simple. It's good. We're good. We have a good relationship. Super simple. No drama. So that's a zero fights person. And this is who I want you to aim to be in your life. If you're listening to this podcast, this is then what you are craving in your life to get all that fighting drama out of your life and be that zero fights person, okay? And then look for examples in your life of those people. Like look for them, find them, and study them, okay? And then also you have the other person, right? The person who thinks their relationships are bumpy. That kind of person would tend to think that their actions or the fights are connected to them as a person. Like if they're fighting, that something's wrong with them or something's wrong with the relationship. They would also feel shame, right? Because they think something's wrong with them. They would also feel guilt, and they would be blaming, right? So notice the difference in feelings is dramatic. We go from open to blame. We go from willing to closed off and guilt and shame. We go from trying to understand the other person to being closed off and blaming them and being defensive. And again, this identity, the identity of this person is they would describe their relationship as not a good relationship, struggling relationship, bumpy, hard relationship, or we fight regularly, right? Again, that label of the relationship is totally optional. I would encourage you to completely never allow yourself to call your relationship bumpy ever again, because you can always find evidence for how your relationship is great if you look for it. So why don't you just start calling your relationship good if you can find evidence for that? Okay? So you can look at these things as your former identity of a person who has hard relationships, and now your new identity is a person who has good relationships. And living into that new identity. And every time you have a situation happen, you have an opportunity to pause and act from the new identity that you are living into. Okay? What would a person who doesn't think there's anything wrong with them, what would they do if they were willing to be wrong here? Well, then you're like, oh crap, this is for me. It's so much easier for me to admit that I was wrong now that I don't think there's anything wrong with me. So I just come right out and say it. Oh my gosh, you're totally right. I was so wrong about this. I'm so sorry. And right away, instantly, I create this closeness and connection with this person I'm talking to, that I'm a person who has a good relationship with them, and I create more love and connection in my life. Just because I am willing to be wrong, okay? And if I'm willing to be wrong, I am that person who is already in the new identity that I want to be. And a little bit of a warning, now that you have some of this information in your head, you might be tempted to use it against yourself to feel bad. It goes something like this. Oh my gosh, I know better. I already know better how to do this. I shouldn't be doing this other thing. I shouldn't be fighting, or I shouldn't be blaming, or I shouldn't be shaming. Take it easy. Take a deep breath. We have all gone through this lesson of using this information to beat ourselves up, and it's completely not necessary. You are building a muscle of the new identity of I have good relationships, I'm a zero fights person, and you don't have to feel bad because you're human. You're going to make mistakes. This is a process. You're not going to go from 0 to 100. You will have to learn through mistakes, right? I mean, we have to be reminded of that, even when we're adults, and that's how we learn, right? In the beginning, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and you're not going to be able to catch yourself in the middle of it. You're going to have a fight, and afterwards, you can reflect and think, oh, right, I was totally wrong. Let me go and connect with them over this now. This is how I want to show up next. And as with practice, you will get better at it. And soon you'll be able to pause in the middle and choose to switch into the new identity. And with that practice, after you practice that a lot, you're going to prevent so many fights in your relationships that they're not even going to happen. You're not even going to get mad. You're not even going to start blaming. You're not even going to feel like something's wrong with you. You're just going to drop into wanting to understand the other person right away and connect with them over it and say you're sorry or whatever. So that's what I have for you today. This is a process. This is so worth doing, because once we have the, we're good relationship, then we are not thinking about it at all. We're thinking of this fun stuff we want to do in our life with those people. What do we want to do with them once we're not fighting with them, once we're not obsessed about or dreading seeing them, or dreading the family reunion, or what else? If we're not spending a lot of time feeling guilty after a fight and dragging it with us like a heavy purse for days on end, and then blaming ourselves and shaming ourselves, we have all that energy freed up to do our life, to have fun. And I know I spent a lot of time doing that with myself, by myself, and with others, and it was horrible and not fun, and I was not having any fun. So free yourself up, be the zero fights person, and then you'll have time to do what you actually want to do that's fun, right? All right, my friends, I hope you found this super useful. And whatever person you want to be, you can be that person. And it's not dependent on anything except for what you decide to believe about yourself. This is so true in every aspect of your life, whether it's food or health and fitness or relationships or career. Whatever you want to be, you can live into that identity at any age, and irregardless of what your circumstances are. All right. Well, I'd love to help you to get to be the zero fights person. Let's work together. I can help you get there. It's only 6 weeks. Your life is going to change forever. And you're not going to only have zero fights with that one person. All of your relationships will change. And then after that, you can create the life that you want. That's super fun. And you never are obsessed about things you don't like. All right. I love you all so much. And I'll talk to you next week. Bye.